This is chapter 3, part 4, and we'll be dealing with some issues today. Living for day by day, reinventing yourself, getting used to the solitary life, the weekend void, the widow card, being single, and making some structure. Living day by day. The day by day was a habit I adopted very early in my bereavement. Honestly, there was no other way to face my life. I simply worked through each day and did not make big plans for next week. My emotions were swinging around and I never knew how I would be tomorrow. This living for today works well. I felt less pressure to achieve and manage it all, and anything that stressed me was put off until tomorrow or the next week. Before this event, I had weeks planned ahead and could cope well. Since the death now, I knew that every hour was hour by hour. You need to make changes in your expectations and lessen your load. The day-by-day method takes a lot of pressure off you, and instead of having to focus ahead, you deal with smaller pieces of time. My calendar looked bare and different, but it worked well. I did not like having to do day by day, but there was a kind of peace in it. When others press you for a decision, tell them you may or may not do it, and will have to let them know. The only person who is important to look after is you. Do not commit, and when you do, use a cancellation clause. After a while, people get used to your new coping mechanism, then you can heal and see how you are in the months to come. Getting out of bed and facing another day is challenging enough without having a diary full of stressful activities. Reinventing yourself. Reinventing yourself presents problems. You have to go back to searching your soul to discover the real you, the old you. One outcome from being in a long-term relationship is that you may do less of those sort of activities than before. But after the loss, it makes you look at yourself in another light. I was free to be whoever I wanted to be without the couple aspect to consider. There was a liberation there, but it was also daunting. Initially, it did sadden me because I missed being married. However, I had no choice. I was here alone. As the bereaving time moves ahead, you are left with many decisions. One of the biggest ones is, who am I now? I asked myself what I liked and what I wanted to do. I began with a list of what I love to do now and before when I was younger. Then I set about exploring these hidden talents. I hauled out all of my old treasures and began to change the whole house. All my blue and white china came out, as did my china collection. It took a while to develop my areas of interest, but bit by bit I emerged and began to manifest my deeper self. During this time of growth, I worked on every aspect of who I was. I even looked into my current relationships and past pastimes. I basically trawled back into my past and brought back whatever I had loved before. Gradually, my home looked more like me, and the energy changed dramatically. In my case, it was a reflection of my femininity and soul nature. I rediscovered subjects that had always fascinated me and Googled more. The parts of my personality I wished to get rid of, I worked away at removing. The parts I wanted to embrace and make bigger, I did the same. I wanted to be a better, more loving person through this terrible ordeal. As they say, I wanted to come out of it better, not bitter. The solitary life. Being widowed is a solitary life. You do everything alone and the days and nights are really, really long. As the months come, the solitary time does get easier on some level, but it also becomes harder to bear. And the repetitive nature of your life can feel grueling. I was tired of doing it all on my own. Although I was more skilled at doing the necessary tasks, it was tiring and felt sad. Of course, you may connect with others and keep yourself busy, but underneath the pain and constant aching remains. The soul life brings some benefits, and there's a kind of freedom, and you can do whatever you want. However, there is a cost. Unless you have lived this life, you will not understand the upheaval it causes. I was faced with myself every day, and the passing of time did not change that reality. Be kind to yourself and know that the pining you feel is true and real. No one ever talks about pining, but that's how you feel. I ached to be in a couple relationship. My nature was not a solitary one, and I love living with others. And this was the first time for 4 decades that I was totally alone, and it was awful. You do adjust, but it is a non-life because of the obvious emptiness. No one and nothing actually fills that emotional crater. But keep positive and endeavour to make the most of a raw deal, and never feel guilty or weak for disliking it. Loners may cope better but I think even they will pine. In all experiences there are lessons, and living alone makes you stronger and more resilient. But I would not choose it as my lifestyle. I am not really cut out to live a solitary existence. Still, it is my reality right now, and I need to make the most of the life I have. The weekend void. Weekends can feel everlasting and challenging. Try to plan something on at least one day, if possible, fill Saturday and Sunday. My first weekend experiences were disastrous. I felt terribly lost. Being a family and couple time, I was less likely to want to invade other people's personal space. However, plan to see someone for coffee or organise an outing. Maybe you can even work on the weekend sometimes. I do that. Although it only fills a few hours, it breaks up the 2 days. I had weekends that were totally empty, and so I decided to go shopping on one of the days. I also took myself out for coffee or off to the garden shop. Saturday nights were, and continue to be, particularly barren, and so I made sure I watched a movie. Single and widowed people are the most available. They are also rattling around, and their time is not as limited. Some groups meet on weekends, and joining them is a great idea. Nothing replaces your partner, but having spent every weekend together, I found this time the hardest to deal with. Plan ahead, and on the times when you have no social outings with people, go to the shops. At the beginning of the weekend may feel like a whole week, unless you plan it ahead. The widow card. I had a funny little name I called where I was, and I called it using the widow card. The widow card is the card you use when you don't want to do something. It allows you to decline and not show up. Use the widow card to extricate yourself from stressful or undesirable events. I did not wish to travel and used it. I was not up to a funeral, so I did not go. Being widowed is a daily struggle, and some days are definitely better than others. Underneath all of your trying to cope runs a river of unrelenting sorrow. Unless someone has been down this path, they cannot know how it feels. Only you do, and me. Pull out the widow card as often as necessary. Of course, when I say widow, I suppose I mean widower too. Bear no guilt and make no excuses. Grief entitles you to tender loving care and time out. As you move through the months and years, you heal and need the card less and less. You have to protect yourself, and the best person to know how to do this is you. Sometimes you may agree, then change your mind, and it's fine to chop and change because your emotions are shifting continually. I was quite exhausted sometimes and didn't sleep. The widow card saved me many times. I wanted to be like I was before, when I could achieve anything I set my heart on, but the crippling pain and loss knocked me over and left me a shell of myself. Be kind to yourself. You are facing a monumental loss. It will take time to heal. The more you use the widow or widow's card, the more others come to realize that you are not a superhero. Being single, although you always retain your single self, even in a close relationship, being single is hard. You have lost an entire part of your daily life. You sleep alone, wake up alone, and spend countless hours as solitary beings. Some single ventures are already familiar: shopping, hobbies, being with certain friends. But for the most part, you are now lost in the sea of your forced singleness. Singleness is not a choice. Of course, having good friends is good, but the proximity of a close, constant partner is different. There were days I would not even go shopping alone again. I wanted to go to the movies, but not by myself. Even with practice, you will have these days. You know you can do it, but it's too sad and you just stay home. Living as a single person, again, takes time and effort. How well you cope depends on where you are emotionally. Some days you seem to fly through it, and then without warning, you are thrust back into the struggle. Listen to your inner voice. Cancel outings when emotions are high. Staying home is a self-nurturing act, not being weak. The people you are meeting are not feeling like you, therefore you must follow your own meter. Being single brings opportunities, but it challenges you to the core. Making structure. Once your loved one is gone, all your structures become obsolete. Everyone has their own particular lifestyle, and the couple one is vastly different to the single one you now faced. With all that was falling apart around me, the smallest bit of structure gave me a kind of security. Before I knew how it was, and the structure of my marriage was familiar, now it was totally turned upside down. Little remained from my former life. The days were alien to me and stressful. I had no partner to share or confide in. I had no shoulder to lean on. Once your internal structure is destroyed, life feels chaotic. Therefore, beginning to form some semblance of structure is important. It may be as simple as a regular meal program or exercise routine. Perhaps your best friend meets you every week, or you ring certain people at night instead of during the day. Instead of shopping in the evening, you shop on the weekend to be around other people. Regardless of your new structure, it will give you comfort and a format to your empty days. I had daily short goals, which included connecting with at least one person and maybe watching a favourite program. During the day, I try to be outside and get some sun and do a little gardening every day. Around the house, I endeavour to tidy or sort out some area to keep some sort of order. These structures kept me heading into the future as I redid a room or revamped the back patio. Some days you will achieve more than others, and as time passes, these mini structures give your life meaning and propel you into the next phase as a single person. You can do it.